saw, what they endured, what they eventually refused to accept,
quiet for long.
and what their collective defiance tells us about the man they were serving and the system that protected him for far too long. Let's establish exactly what the HRH removal means, because it is important to understand the weight of what Andrew is defying when those voices arrived. This was not open to interpretation. This was the clearest possible signal from the highest possible authority that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was no longer His Royal Highness, that the designation he had used his entire life, that had organized his identity and his household and his expectations and his relationship with everyone around him was gone, not and gave off that energy. In an entire royal Australia's manipulated by people who were born into extraordinary privilege and who lived extraordinary lives, Andrew was the one who made the people around him feel the difference in status, who communicated through his mannerisms and his manner and the texture of his daily interactions that the gap currently unfilled serving him was fundamentally cursed, but directly by King Charles himself. His £1 million annual allowance is gone. His private security has been entirely withdrawn. And then the staff revolt, because this is where the story takes a turn that, for anyone who has been following the accounts of how Andrew treated the people around him, feels like a form of delayed consequence removal. That was what everyone expected, and then someone staffed the boxes. HRH office, HRH sitting room, HRH meeting room, His Royal Highness, written in black and white on box after box after box. The title that King Charles had formally and legally stripped from his brother captures the situation with a precision that is almost painful in its specificity. Beatrice and Eugenie, Andrew's daughters, they retain their royal titles, they are still princesses. Andrew is not, and royal protocol is clear about what happens in that situation. When someone without a royal title encounters and who is labelling his boxes HRH, there is something almost surreal about it, something that belongs more to fiction than to reality. The gap between the label on the box and the reality of the man carrying it is so vast that it strains credulity.
And without those
yet there it is, documented the photograph king simply erase.
Royal watchers say the
Let that sit for a moment. No king could simply erase. His brother, the monarch, using the full constitutional authority of the British Crown, had done precisely that, had done it formally, legally, permanently. And Andrew's private response was to declare that it was not just the authority that removed the fundamental expression of who he was and what he was worth. For whom, as royal biographer Andrew Looney put it explicitly in his newsletter in March 2026, titles and the rigid observance of bowing and curtsying were absolutely vital, not important, not significant, not earned, vital. Now the person above him. Ode Burrell traced this behaviour to Andrew's childhood, to the dynamic of a mother who by the time Andrew arrived, with the Queen more settled on the throne and more available to be a mother than she had been with Charles, and Anne found it difficult to say no to him. Who gave him more protection, more affection, more shielding from the ordinary consequences to the individual children about the limits of their own behaviour. Multiple sources reported to Radar Online that Andrew's personal protection officers consistently walked on eggshells around him, that the tension of being in his proximity was a daily reality that required constant management, and that his demands extended to details that by any reasonable standard were extraordinary. Later by Prince Charles, he would later still Princess Diana's trusted confidant, the person she called her rock, a man with more than 20 years embedded in the innermost workings of the royal family, someone whose proximity to the institution is beyond question and whose testimony cannot be dismissed as that of an outsider with an agenda. Ever had a positive thing to say about Andrew? None. In a household that worked with multiple members of the family, in a profession where difficult personalities are part of the landscape and tolerance for demanding behaviour is a professional requirement, not one positive account. That is remarkable.
Royal households are famously private,
everything else
and official confirmation about internal staffing
those things
changes
all follow
is
a
rarely
comprehensible
provided.
logic of
That
consequence
means
and
much of the conversation
accountability.
surrounding the
What is
situation is
strange,
driven
what
by
makes you stop
speculation
and look again, is the
commentary,
boxes,
rather
the
than
deliberate,
confirmed statements
systematic
point one
labelling of
thing
an
is certain,
entire household
though.
with a
story of
designation
Prince
that the
Andrew
monarch,
continues
using
to
the full
evolve
authority of his
from his once
constitutional
prominent
office,
role
removed
representing
4
Britain
months
abroad
earlier.
to
It
his
is
current
not
life away from
impossible to
official royal
avoid. Habit
duties.
produces
The
occasional
Duke of
not
York's
just
journey has been
Andrew's
filled with
failure.
dramatic
It is the
twists, and the
institution's
sudden
failure,
departure of
the
staff
failure of a
members is
system
just the
that
latest
protected its
chapter
own so
in a saga
effectively that
that
it
continues to
ultimately could
capture
not
global
protect itself
attention
from the
as
consequences
always.
of that
The
protection,
royal world is
that
never sure of
managed and
intrigue,
contained and
whether the
absorbed
staffing
and
shakeup marks a
deflected until
temporary
the thing
adjustment
being
or a
managed
permanent
could
shift
no
in
longer be
Andrew's
managed.
private household
Until the
remains
thing
to be
being
seen.
contained
But
broke the
one thing is
container.
clear.
Andrew
March
is paying
2026.
Every development
consequences. The
connected to the
lorries
Duke
pull
of
up
York's
to Marsh
still
Farm on the
sparks
Sandringham
debate,
estate.
curiosity, and
Hundreds of
intense
boxes
public
being
interest.
unloaded.
And as
A
new
man
details
moving into his
emerge,
new,
the story
significantly
will
reduced
undoubtedly
home
continue to
after being
unfold.
forced out of the
What do you
30-room
think about the
Royal Lodge
situation?
mansion he had
Do these
occupied
sudden
for
staff
years.
departures signal a
A
bigger
quiet
change ahead for
private
Prince
removal,
Andrew?
that was what
Share your
everyone
thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy deep dives into royal news, scandals, and the luxury world surrounding the monarchy, make sure to subscribe and turn
management
on
and
notifications
containment.
so you never miss the next
Accountability from
update.
below, not from the palace, not from the press, not from Parliament or the legal system or the machinery of the state. From the staff, from the people at the bottom of the hierarchy who absorbed every small act of contempt over years of service and who have now collectively decided that they will not absorb any more. The numbers are not described Andrew's pomposity as boundless. He wrote in direct and unambiguous terms that Andrew made life hell for the people around him, that he told staff, and again, these are specific words with a specific quality, to get out of here. To go away in terms considerably more colourful than that he showed zero respect because he believed service was simply owed to him, not earned with a title he no longer holds. In November 2025, King Charles used letters patent to formally remove the HRH styling from his younger brother. Letters patent are not a press release, they are not a palace spokesperson's comment to a journalist, they are a legal instrument. A formal document bearing the monarch's signature that has the force of law. When the monarch removes a title using letters patent, the removal is complete per Ford. One source described it as a mutiny, a collective act of professional refusal from the very people he once commanded with such contempt, the people he told to get out, the people he reassigned for wearing the wrong aftershave, the people whose dignity he treated as an optional consideration. Hardman added with the bluntness of someone who has studied this family for decades that he does not think Andrew will take it well. That is an understatement of considerable magnitude. Think about what that means for a man whose entire identity has been organized around rank, for whom the protocol of titles and the pecking order of royal hierarchy was not just social distance. I acknowledge this. I cannot shield him from it. Let's talk about what he asked for after the arrest, because it tells you everything about where his head was after the most humiliating public moment of his life. The demands that reportedly emerged during the negotiations around his move to Marsh Farm included a 6 to 7 bedroom house on the Sandringham estate, a full reports from Australia's The Nightly published in November 2025, immediately after the formal removal, revealed that Andrew was still insisting staff inside Royal Lodge address him as His Royal Highness Prince Andrew. Not as a slip of habit, not as an occasional lapse, but as an insistence, a requirement. Encounters someone with one in a formal setting, they bow. Andrew must bow to his own daughters. Royal biographer Robert Hardman, speaking on the Palace Confidential podcast, confirmed this directly. At any family gathering where protocol applies, Andrew must bow to Beatrice and Eugenie, the daughters he raised, the children he watched grow up inside the same institution that has now restructured the hierarchy between them in a way that places him below